People say dogs don't remember, but sometimes they remember everything. In a small-town shelter just outside Edmonton, Alberta, the halls were quiet, save for the soft rustling of paws and the occasional bark. But today, something different happened. A large German shepherd, gray around the muzzle, eyes dull with sorrow, suddenly lifted his head and cried. Not a bark, not a growl, a deep, aching sound, almost human, like a broken memory had come back to life. The shelter staff rushed over. "That's Cody," whispered one of the workers, eyes wide. "He never makes a sound." Standing near the entrance, confused and motionless, was a man. His name was Elliot Wade, a 39-year-old construction foreman from Calgary. Tired eyes, calloused hands, and a heart that had long since stopped believing in miracles. He wasn't here to adopt. In fact, he wasn't even supposed to stop. "Just passing through," he said. "Just needed directions." But fate doesn't ask for explanations. The moment Cody saw Elliot, something ancient stirred. A bond once shattered trembled again. But Elliot? He looked at the dog and blinked. Nothing. Just another face. Just another cage. Except Cody wouldn't stop crying. The staff looked on, speechless. And Elliot? He suddenly felt something. A whisper, maybe. A pull in his chest. Like he'd seen that dog before. Somewhere far back. Somewhere painful. I'm sorry," he muttered, turning to leave. But Cody wouldn't move. Wouldn't look away. His eyes, once dim, locked on Elliot's. And then came the soft whine. Desperate. Pleading. Like he was saying, "Please, don't walk away again." And Elliot? He froze. His breath caught. His memories didn't. Not yet. But something had begun. What if a man didn't just lose a dog, but a part of himself? And what if that part had been waiting all these years, behind rusted bars and forgotten records? What happened in Elliot's past that he tried so hard to forget? And why does Cody cry only when he sees him? The answers lie in the shadows of memory, where pain sleeps and second chances wait. Stories like this remind us that no matter where we are, we feel the same pain and the same hope. Comment your country below, and if this moment touched you, hit like and subscribe, because kindness deserves to be passed on. Elliot hadn't cried in years. Not since that cold night 10 years ago when everything fell apart. He was 29 back then, young, married, and full of plans. His wife, Emily, was a school teacher with a laugh that filled rooms. Their home just outside Vancouver wasn't big, but it was warm, and more importantly, it was filled with love. And then came Cody. Not as a pup. No, Cody had been a rescue already. Found shivering under an overpass, his ribs poking through dull fur. Emily had begged Elliot to keep him. "He needs us," she said. And strangely, Elliot, who didn't think of himself as a dog person, agreed. From that day on, Cody became more than just a dog. He was their shadow, their silent comfort. When Emily was sick with the flu, Cody would curl beside her. When Elliot came home exhausted from construction sites, Cody would nudge his hand until he smiled. They never called him a pet. They called him family. But love doesn't shield you from loss. One rainy January night, Emily was driving home from parent-teacher meetings. A truck slid through a red light. The doctors said it was instant. No pain. Just gone. Elliot didn't believe them. And Cody? Cody howled for hours that night, his body pressed to the front door. Waiting. Hoping. Elliot couldn't take it. Every corner of the house smelled like Emily. Every glance from Cody reminded him of what he lost. So one morning, with hands shaking and eyes swollen, Elliot loaded Cody into the truck. He told himself he'd find a better place for him. Somewhere with a yard. Kids. Laughter. He left him at a no-kill shelter in Kelowna and drove away. He didn't look back. He couldn't. And since then, he had built a wall. Around his heart. Around the memory of a woman and the dog they loved. Until today. Until Cody cried. The shelter staff gently told Elliot that Cody had been transferred through multiple facilities over the years. From BC to Alberta. "He's been through a lot," one woman said softly. "But he's gentle. Just sad." That word cut through Elliot like a blade. Sad. That's what Cody was now. That's what Elliot had become, too. A man walking through life like a ghost. He sat down outside on a cold metal bench, head in hands. And for the first time in a decade, memories flooded in. Emily's smile. Cody's bark echoing down the hallway. The feel of fur under his hand. I left him, Elliot whispered. I left him when he needed me most. The wind blew, but he didn't move. Inside, Cody had stopped crying. But his eyes never left the door. Elliot stood again. I just need a minute, he said to the staff. He walked to the gate. Cody stood on the other side, tail low, eyes waiting. Elliot reached out a hand, and Cody slowly stepped forward. He sniffed, then licked the fingers. Elliot knelt down. Hey boy, he whispered, voice cracking. Cody whined, just once, and leaned his full weight against Elliot's chest. 10 years of guilt collapsed in a single breath. The man who once walked away now held the dog he never truly forgot. The shelter lobby was quiet again, but the silence felt different now. Elliot stood frozen, his arms still wrapped around Cody's thick neck. The dog didn't move, didn't bark. He just breathed, slow and heavy, as if afraid the moment might vanish if he let go. The staff watched from a distance. None of them had ever seen Cody like this. Not in the months he'd been there. Not once. I think he knows you, said Jenna, the young volunteer with soft brown eyes. I think he's been waiting. Elliot didn't reply. His hand stayed on Cody's back, moving slowly. But inside his chest, everything had started to shake. For 10 years, he had buried this part of himself. The one that believed in forgiveness. The one that still remembered joy. The one that once loved so deeply it scared him. Now here it was, looking up at him with golden eyes. Back in the visitation room, Elliot sat on the floor. The cold tile pressed through his jeans, but he didn't care. Cody circled him slowly, sniffing, studying, remembering. Do you know me? Elliot whispered. Or am I just a face from another life? Cody walked over to the corner of the room where a battered tennis ball lay in a bin. He nudged it gently, then turned back and dropped it at Elliot's feet. Elliot stared. Years ago, that ball had been Cody's favorite. Emily would always laugh watching him chase it across their tiny yard, skidding into flower pots and knocking over lawn chairs. You still remember, Elliot said, voice breaking. Cody wagged his tail once. Jenna stepped in quietly. Would you like to spend more time with him? We can let you walk him outside. Elliot nodded. Minutes later, they were in the small fenced yard behind the shelter. The sun was starting to fall, casting long shadows across the patchy grass. Cody ran a little, stopped, sniffed, then returned to Elliot's side like he had never left. Elliot pulled out his phone, not to take a picture, just to look at something he hadn't touched in years. A photo of Emily. She was sitting on the couch, Cody's head on her lap, both of them asleep. I don't deserve him, Elliot whispered, barely loud enough for even the wind to hear. But Cody wasn't listening to doubt. He was too busy watching the man he never stopped loving. Elliot paced a little, chewing the inside of his cheek. He hadn't planned this. He didn't have a leash, didn't have food, didn't have answers. But Cody didn't care, because love doesn't need preparation. It just needs presence. Do you think, Elliot asked Jenna softly, he'd come with me? After all this time? Jenna smiled. He already has. The real question is, will you let him? The drive back to Calgary was long. The shelter had given Elliot a leash, a small bag of food, and Cody's old medical records. The rest he'd figure out. Cody lay curled in the back seat, his head resting gently on the center console, eyes never leaving Elliot's face. About an hour in, Elliot reached over and scratched behind Cody's ear. I'm sorry I left you. Cody didn't flinch. He just sighed and closed his eyes. Forgiveness doesn't always need words. Sometimes it's just a quiet car ride and the sound of someone breathing beside you again. They reached Elliot's house around midnight. It wasn't the same one. He had moved years ago after the memories became too heavy. The new place was smaller, quieter. A 2-bedroom bungalow with a garden Emily would have loved. Elliot opened the front door slowly, unsure what would happen. Would Cody hesitate? Would he turn back? But Cody walked right in. He sniffed the floor, turned the corner, found the living room, and curled up on the rug like he had always belonged there. Elliot stood by the doorway watching him. "Home," he said softly. "We're home, boy." And for the first time in 10 years, something in his chest began to heal. That first night, Elliot barely slept. He sat on the edge of his bed, the bedside lamp still glowing, casting soft shadows across the room. Cody was lying at the foot of the bed, just like he used to. Elliot watched him breathe, watched his chest rise and fall, and remembered, 10 years earlier, on the night after Emily's funeral, Cody had done the same thing. No barking, no scratching at the door. He had simply laid there, his body pressed close to Elliot's, sharing the silence of grief. Back then, Elliot had turned away, but now he turned toward him. He slid off the bed, curled beside Cody on the floor, and whispered, "I missed you." Cody blinked, slowly, softly, as if to say, "I know." In the morning, the house felt different. Not just because of the presence of paws padding across the floor, but because of the feeling in the air. It was warmer, fuller, like life had come back. Elliot made coffee. He poured kibble into a bowl, watched Cody eat with calm, patient bites. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He pulled out the old photo album from the hallway closet. Most of the pictures were fading, their edges curled with time. There was one of Emily holding Cody's leash with both hands, smiling under the autumn sun. There was one of Elliot and Cody, nose to nose, both covered in mud after a long hike. Elliot smiled, and then he cried. Not the silent tears he'd held back for a decade, but the kind that cracked his chest wide open. Cody walked over, rested his head on Elliot's knee, and stayed. Later that afternoon, Elliot drove to a quiet park on the edge of town, the place Emily used to love. He and Cody walked the winding path past the trees, the grass glistening with melted snow. Every now and then, Elliot would stop and look down. Cody was keeping pace, tail gently wagging, glancing up as if to say, "Still here, still yours." At the far end of the trail was a wooden bench. Elliot sat, and for the first time in 10 years he talked. "I was scared," he admitted. "After Emily, I didn't know how to love anything without breaking." He looked at Cody. "But you waited. You waited for me." Cody leaned in, pressing his head against Elliot's shoulder. It was quiet for a long time. And then, Elliot said the words he hadn't said in so long. They felt foreign in his mouth. "I forgive myself." He blinked, let the sentence settle into the air. "I do," he repeated. "Because you did first." Cody licked his hand. That night, something changed. Cody no longer lingered by the door, no longer flinched at thunder. He walked confidently into rooms. He dozed by the fireplace. He watched Elliot make dinner like old times, eyes alert, waiting for a dropped piece of chicken. But most of all, he rested, really rested, because finally he wasn't waiting anymore. Elliot began journaling, not for therapy, not for closure, but to remember. He wrote about Cody's small habits, the way he tilted his head when confused, the soft snore he made during naps, the way his ears perked up at the sound of Emily's name. One day he wrote something that would stay with him forever. "I thought I rescued him once, but he's rescued me twice." In the weeks that followed, Elliot changed. Neighbors who once saw a tired man now saw someone who smiled. The woman at the corner store asked if Cody was new. "No," Elliot said. "He's just come home." And one Saturday morning, as snow gently fell outside, Elliot sat with Cody curled beside him on the porch. "I want to share you," he said. He picked up his phone and began typing. A social media post. One picture. One sentence. "Cody waited for 10 years. I don't know how, but he did. And now I get to spend every day making sure he knows. I would never leave again." The post went viral. People commented from Brazil, South Africa, Germany, the Philippines. Thousands of strangers who didn't know Elliot or Cody, yet somehow understood, because pain is universal. But so is love. That night, Elliot sat in front of the fireplace, Cody snoozing peacefully at his feet. He picked up Emily's old sweater from the closet, still faintly holding her scent, and wrapped it gently around Cody like a blanket. "You kept part of her safe for me," he whispered. "Thank you." And in the warm flicker of firelight, Cody let out a soft sigh, a sound of contentment, a sound of home. Healing isn't a straight line. Some mornings, Cody woke up whimpering, his paws twitching in a nightmare Elliot couldn't see. Other times, he'd freeze at sudden noises. Loud doors, a dropped plate, even Elliot's phone buzzing too loud. Trauma leaves shadows. And though Cody had come home, parts of him were still stuck in the places he'd been left. Elliot knew the feeling. He too had nights where he lay awake, wondering if love would ever feel safe again. But now, they had each other. It started with short walks, then longer ones. Elliot talked the whole time, telling Cody stories about the day, about Emily, about the past. And Cody listened, always listening. One morning, at a busy park downtown, a group of kids ran up to pet him. Cody flinched, stepping back, eyes wide. Elliot gently knelt beside him. "It's okay, buddy. You're safe." He let the leash go a little slack, and Cody, trembling, let one of the children stroke his back. A small moment, but a big step. At home, Cody still hesitated at the bedroom door, as if afraid Elliot might shut it again. So Elliot started leaving it wide open. Every night, and every night Cody crept a little closer, until one night he didn't just curl at the foot of the bed. He jumped up beside Elliot, placed his head on his chest, and sighed. A full-body sigh, like the weight of years had finally been put down. Elliot didn't move. He just placed his hand gently on Cody's head and whispered, "You're not going anywhere, and neither am I." Still, not everyone understood. Some friends questioned why Elliot would adopt an older dog. "He's already lived his best years. He's probably broken. You should have gotten a puppy." But Elliot didn't listen. He didn't need to, because love isn't measured in years. It's measured in moments. And Cody had already given him more moments of truth than any human ever had. One night, during a storm, Cody paced anxiously, ears pinned back. Elliot watched him for a while, then picked up an old blanket, Emily's favorite. He sat on the floor beside Cody, wrapped them both in it, and hummed a tune she used to sing. It wasn't perfect, but Cody slowly lay down, head in Elliot's lap, eyes finally closing. They began volunteering at the shelter together. Every Saturday, Elliot would fix shelves or repaint walls. Cody would sit with the new dogs, especially the scared ones. He had a gift for it, a quiet presence that seemed to tell the others, "I know, but it gets better." One day, a woman with a nervous Labrador asked, "Is he trained?" Elliot smiled. "No, he's just kind." On Cody's 10th birthday, Elliot baked him a meatloaf cake. They celebrated in the park, with friends, volunteers, and even some of the shelter dogs Cody had comforted. Someone asked Elliot if he had any regrets. He paused. "Only that I didn't come back sooner." That night, after the guests had gone and the candles had burned down, Elliot stood outside with Cody under the stars. "Do you remember the trail where we used to hike with Emily?" he asked. Cody wagged his tail. "We're going tomorrow." It wasn't easy. Cody's legs weren't what they used to be. But Elliot carried a small blanket in his backpack, just in case. They made it to the summit. And there, overlooking the valley, Elliot took a deep breath. "She'd be proud of you," he said. Cody looked out at the horizon, then turned and rested his head on Elliot's shoulder. Back home, Elliot began writing again. Not just journal entries, stories, real ones, about grief, about dogs, about people who left and those who stayed. He posted the first one online. It ended with a simple sentence. "Sometimes, the one you rescue is the one who teaches you how to live again." Thousands read it, and something beautiful began to happen. People shared their own stories, of dogs, of regret, of healing. A woman from Ireland wrote, I never forgave myself for giving up my Labrador. But your story, it gave me hope. A teen from the Philippines said, I showed this to my dad. Now we're going back to the shelter together. Elliot read every word. And every night, he'd sit beside Cody and whisper, You're still changing the world, buddy. Autumn returned like an old friend. Leaves drifted down in bursts of amber and red, covering the ground where Cody now walked slowly beside Elliot. His steps were a little heavier now, his joints a little stiffer, but his eyes, still bright, still full of love. They had created a life that neither of them thought they'd ever have again. Morning walks, lazy afternoons, evenings by the fireplace, Elliot reading and Cody snoring gently, legs twitching with dreams. There was peace now, and purpose. Elliot's stories had taken on a life of their own. He started a blog. Second Tales, he called it. Each post was a piece of his journey with Cody. He didn't try to make them go viral. He just told the truth. About guilt, about grief, about redemption, and people kept reading. From every corner of the world. One day, a letter came in the mail. An actual letter, not just another comment or message online. It was from a young man named Jordan in Georgia, USA. He had recently lost his father. Said he didn't see a point in going on. But after reading Elliot's story about Cody, he adopted a senior beagle from the shelter down the road. I named her Grace, the letter ended, because that's what your story gave me. Elliot sat on the porch holding the letter in shaking hands, eyes brimming. He looked down at Cody lying beside him. You did that, he whispered. And Cody, now 12, just wagged his tail. As winter came, Cody slowed more. The vet said it was normal. Age mostly. Maybe some arthritis. Elliot adjusted. He built a ramp for the porch. He bought orthopedic bedding. He canceled plans just to sit with Cody when he seemed stiff or tired. Because love does that. It shows up when it's inconvenient. It stays when it's hard. It says, you matter. Even when the world forgets. Then, one morning, Cody didn't get up for breakfast. Elliot rushed over, heart pounding. But Cody opened his eyes slowly, lifted his head, and licked Elliot's hand. Still there. Still his. But something was different. Cody was tired. Deep tired. Elliot didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, he spent the day lying beside him, reading Emily's favorite book aloud. That night, Cody struggled to climb into bed. Elliot lifted him gently, tucked him under the same blanket Emily used to use, and whispered stories until Cody's breathing slowed. Thank you, he said softly, for waiting, for forgiving, for everything. Cody blinked once, and slept. The next morning, the world was quieter. The house felt heavier, but not empty, because Cody had filled every space with love that couldn't be erased. Elliot didn't break. He remembered. He remembered the crying dog at the shelter, the soft whine that started everything, the journey from pain to peace, and he smiled through the tears, because he had been given something rare, a second chance. A week later, Elliot returned to the shelter, this time not to adopt, but to volunteer full-time. He gave talks about trauma bonding, about senior dogs, about how the heart remembers. People listened, and they cried, and they adopted, because sometimes, one story is all it takes to open someone's heart. A photo still sits on Elliot's mantle. It's of Emily, holding Cody, with Elliot beside them, arms around both. Family. And below the photo, a small engraved plate reads, He waited, and I came home. In the spring, Elliot returned to the summit trail with a small wooden box in his backpack. He reached the same lookout point he and Cody had stood on the year before. He opened the box. Inside were Cody's ashes. And a note, just one sentence. Run free now. I'll catch up one day. The wind picked up, scattering the ashes into the sunlight. And for a moment, Elliot swore he felt fur brush his hand. Not cold, not gone, just free. Redemption doesn't mean erasing the past. It means choosing to love again, even after loss, even after failure, even after time. Elliot chose, and in doing so, he found what he thought he'd lost forever. Not just a dog, but his heart. Some stories aren't just stories. They're mirrors. And maybe, just maybe, you saw a piece of yourself in Elliot. Or Cody. Maybe you've loved and lost. Maybe you've made mistakes you still carry like heavy stones in your chest. But here's the truth. It's not too late. Not to forgive. Not to return. Not to begin again. Cody waited 10 years behind shelter walls. But he never gave up on the person he loved. And Elliot? He found his way back. Not because he was perfect, but because love, real love, is always waiting. If the story moved you, if it reminded you of a pet you loved, or someone you lost, or a second chance you've been too afraid to take, then do one small thing. Leave a comment with your country's name. Let's show the world how far this story has reached. Let's create a map of hope across every border. Canada, Pakistan, USA, Germany, Kenya, Brazil. Wherever you are part of this story now. If you felt something while watching, something real, something raw, click that like button. Not for us, but for the Codys still waiting in shelters. And the Elliots still healing from silence. Subscribe if you want more stories that matter. Stories that remind us what it means to feel, to love, and to come home, no matter how long it takes. And finally, if you truly believe in second chances, write this in the comments. Love German Shepherd Dog, because maybe someone will read it and be inspired to adopt, forgive, or try again. And that's how change begins. One heart, one story, one act of love at a time.